Hey, what's going on, guys? Kitsune TCG here, back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at a version of Spright that is still definitely competitive in today's format. Obviously, Kashtira is still going to be the #1 deck, but this is definitely going to be one of those tier 1.5 decks that you definitely can see a lot of success with. And including the adventure package is going to mean you have an additional either negate with Griffin Rider or interruption with something like a Legal Knight. Obviously, it just depends on what your opponent's playing as far as which option you probably prefer. But you are main decking both of them in the game 1 just in case. But from there, obviously you can make adjustments game 2, game 3. Looking at the deck, you are playing 3 Spright Blue, 3 Jet, 1 Carrot, 1 Red, 1 Pixies. Pretty standard Spright monster lineup. You could maybe make a second argument for a second Red or something, like a second Carrot, something like that. But I think these are going to be pretty much the ratios that have been for the deck for a long while. No real reason to mess with them there. You are running 3 starter, the 1 smashers, and then the 1 Gamma Burst. This is I think eventually made its way into the deck. Obviously, being able to buff all of your level 2, rank 2s, link 2s by 1400 is pretty impactful, especially as you're trying to go for game, because a lot of the monsters overall have lower attacks. So being able to just get them up to a higher attack to, try and close out games is going to definitely be pretty important. And then you're running the 1 Double Cross. This obviously can be several things. This could be a way to stop, Brandon and Red, since you're able to bring one of their monsters back. It could be a way to steal a level 7 monster, to prevent, Kashtira from exceed summoning. Or it could just even be a revival of your Toad to, have an additional negate. So definitely want to run this card in the main deck, because it obviously has several different interactions for you. You are still running the Frog package because we are, still able to make Toad through the Bujinki link, so you want to definitely have those in there. You are running a pretty big Nimble package. You're running the 3 Beaver and 2 Angler. Angler is obviously going to be sent off of Sprint to activate. Plus, they can also be sent off of Fateful Adventure for a search, so you do have a few different options, especially in case you happen to draw it. And it not being once per turn means that you can even technically do both in one turn if you, need to, but that's not usually too big of a deal. But you are wanting to make sure you run 2 there. You're running the 1 Illegal Knight, the 1 Griffin Rider. Like I said, depends on the matchup. I think typically, if you're going first, you're not aware of what your opponent's playing yet, you're going to more often want to lean towards that Griffin Rider, just because having an additional omni negate is definitely pretty valuable. And then you're running the 3 Water Enchantress, the 3 Right, Fateful Dracoback, so just maxed out as much as you can on the adventure package. Obviously you want to do that for as long as you can. Looking at some going second cards, you were just running 2 Ash Blossom. Maybe you could bump it up to 3 with adjusting some ratios if you want, but Ash it's a little bit situational. Obviously, it really is high impact against something like Brandon Fusion, protecting yourself against Book of Eclipse, and it does have a few targets that, obviously it hits. Anything that adds or special summons is obviously really good to hit. But because most decks have a way of playing around it, it's not hugely impactful, except for a few, those key situations. Maybe they're really trying to get a search off of the Kashtira field spell or Brandon Fusion. But overall, it's just not super impactful, so I don't think that's why you would need to run 3. But it is still obviously the best hand trap, so if you're incorporating at least, some of them, it's definitely the one you want to. Looking at Nibiru, obviously, just punishing them if they decide to go for the full Kashtira combo, it definitely requires more than 5 summons, so you can definitely interact with them that way. And then Book of Eclipse, this can probably be the one that you want to run over evenly. It's a pretty good way to interact with your opponent's board. And you can obviously, through things like Zeus or, any number of other cards, have a pretty easy way to clear them before, they have a chance at drawing any cards off of it. And, looking at the extra deck, pretty standard. You want to still be running the 2 gigantic Spright. It's obviously one of the best things to go into. You still are able to make toads, so we do definitely have them in there. The one number 65, requiring 2 darks. You are playing blue and jet, which both count for that. And sometimes you do end on them, just have them kind of left over, depending on like the hand that you had. So, just kind of getting an additional monster negate, and with obviously a lot of monster effects in the format, it can be pretty impactful. The one Soul Sweeper, this is obviously going to be a really good way of clearing out a monster, that like the Shangri-La that has obviously the destruction protection. This is just a way to kind of banish it, get it out of there. You are playing the one Mannequin Cat, and you have a few targets inside deck, with a YuGiOh or Goliath. These are just obviously going to be pretty easy ways to kind of shut down your opponent. Goliath being, it's like an earth monster, so that can just be, as soon as they go into like Fenrir, you can have like Mannequin Cat, bring out Goliath, lock them out of like their extra deck. So obviously it's kind of like requires a few things, but it is a pretty kind of impactful play depending on like what your opponent's playing and things like that. You do have the one Ninja's Shadow Mosquito. This is obviously another kind of really easy way to go into Zeus, plus kind of clear out and do some damage to your opponent, just because obviously you don't take any battle damage. So yeah, and then you've got the one Downward, and you are playing the 2 Zeus just because you want to avoid your first one being taken from your extra deck. Other things are obviously impactful, but that's probably the most impactful one that you want to play 2 of. From there, you still have got the one Dark. It can still come up. Obviously Dark Monsters are going to be one of the more prevalent in the game, so having that I think is not necessarily a bad thing. The one Sprend, the one Bujinki Link, one IP. This can be pretty good. It obviously depends on what you're ending on, but being able to kind of use that and go into something like an Avermax can be pretty impactful. Just having something that can't be destroyed, obviously has the attack buff. That can usually be pretty hard to deal with for most decks. So it is just kind of like a little option that you have there as well to kind of close out games. Looking at the sideboard, something like Lancia, if you've hit your opponent with something like a Nibiru, playing Kashtira, they're going to obviously be a little bit more weary about going for that full combo, so taking out those and maybe going into something like a Lancia in a game like 2 or 3 or something like that can be pretty important, and it definitely just obviously prevents them from locking out your zones. Like I said, you are playing those 2 Mannequin Cat targets in the side deck. 3 Dark Ruler. This is obviously going to depend on your matchup as far as like what you want, versus like Namiru or Book of Eclipse or Dark Ruler. I think it's probably not the best one, so that's why I think you want it in the side deck, but it still situationally can be pretty important. From there, we definitely want to make sure we have some things to interact with, particularly Labyrinth, because that is definitely one that's been the most like meta contender. But with PHHY obviously popularizing trap tricks, you do definitely want to make sure that you have a few things to play around that deck as well. And then finally, just evenly matched. This is obviously also going to be another really good card against a Labyrinth matchup or Trap Tricks matchup or anything like that. Just kind of putting them on one card going into main phase 2. This deck definitely can play through at least one interruption. So yeah, definitely going to be some really kind of like high impact cards. Not a lot of cards you really bring in going first outside of the YuGiOh and the Goliath, just because the main deck is really kind of has a really strong going first in board. So most of your deck, your extra deck, your side deck cards are going to be there obviously for your kind of going second plays against a few different decks. But overall, I think the deck is still very good. It definitely still can win regional. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a deck like this, were to top or make a finals in a YCS. Just because it still does have like a lot of like versatile plays. But yeah, let me know down below if y'all are playing any version of Spright, or like how you're feeling about the format so far. I'd definitely be kind of interested to see that. And I will see y'all next time. Thank you.